Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank all of you who've been joining us throughout the years. Boy, it's been a haul. We've been broadcasting this show since 2004, and it's always an honor to join you throughout the weekend here on Living in Mexico. So thank you so much for joining us throughout the years. And there's so many there was so many interesting headlines this week, national and international headlines that have to do with Mexico, that I decided to ask Federico Berrueto to come and join us. As you know, he's been joining us throughout the years. He's a political analyst. And Federico, once again, thank you so much for joining us here Living in Mexico. There's so many issues to talk about, but I think it is important to talk about President Claudia Sheinbaum's visit to Spain this weekend. So why don't we just walk through why she's traveling to Spain at a time where some analysts thought it may not have been the best moment because Spain is clearly, having a face-off with Donald Trump. Mexico's in the middle of negotiating the USMCA, and there's just so many other things in terms of Morena's support for her travel. I mean, just walk us through what were the considerations. Why did she now finally decide to go to go to Spain?
Thanks for having me, Ana Maria. Well, I have to tell you that I have a lot of difficulties to understand the travel of Mrs. Sheinbaum, the President Sheinbaum, to Spain. And I have a lot of problems because I don't know what she could do, what she could say. First of all, the leftist movement, the worldwide leftist movement, is in a very bad position.
Right.
Spain, well, Pedro Sanchez is in a lot of difficulty, not only because he is against Trump, but rather because his government has a lot of difficulties. In the coming weeks, he is going to have elections in Andalusia, if I'm right on that. And it seems that he is going to have a very, very bad result. Lula da Silva, also, he is going in the coming future, he is going to have elections. And it seems that he is going to lose, his party is going to lose the election. And the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, also is the same story. So what you can say is that is the liberal parties who are winning or the best response to the authoritarian regimes or systems. And you can see it in Hungary just this Sunday, and also in Venezuela. Nicolás Maduro was defeated by the right, by the liberal Democrat parties. And I think that the left at this moment have a lot of problems. And they say that they are meeting because they want to defend democracy. And precisely this is my difficulty to understand what could say Mrs. Sheinbaum about democracy. Why? Because she is destroying the Mexican democracy. I don't think she could say, about the how can you improve the economy? How can you improve politics? How can you improve the system, democratic system? And I think that she really cannot say anything that could be useful for the left, for the democracy. And also, I think that Mexico is in a difficult situation because the threat of President Trump. Right now, in this coming weeks, we are negotiating the trade agreement, and so really, I cannot understand the decision of Mrs. Sheinbaum to go to Spain. That's my idea, Ana Maria.
it is strange. It's a visit that should have taken place a year ago, or maybe 6 months ago. But she decided to continue confronting uh, President Andres, to continue supporting President Andres Manuel López Obrador's position against the King of Spain. And this whole, we have to remind our audience that there is, Andres Manuel López Obrador insisted that the King of Spain had to apologize for the conquest of Mexico, or and of course it wasn't clear why the insistence, but that really created a big schism between Spain, which had a president on the left side of the political spectrum. One would have thought that they would have been close allies, and Mexico's president on the left side of the political spectrum. So she comes into power and she continues this confrontation to the point where she finally, I guess, had to figure out a way to get out of it. But at this point, you're absolutely right. I didn't think about it that way. You have Petro, who's on his way out. There's elections coming up. And it's not clear if the left is going to stay in power. You have Lula da Silva, like you said very well. Clearly, Donald Trump doesn't want him to stay in power. You have the president of Spain, who's also, Sanchez is kind of facing a lot of internal political turmoil, and she comes, and I guess, I don't know if Venezuela is going to be there, but you have also Venezuela and Cuba, who are in a lot of turmoil right now. So I don't know, maybe she was going to say goodbye, or at least to show that she has allies. It is a very strange visit that may have a lot of consequences in terms of its the negotiation with this USMCA, which is continuing this week. I don't know, we should probably remind our audience that the US negotiators will be coming to Mexico to continue the evaluation of the USMCA. Do you have any sense what's going to happen, Federico, with that negotiation?
Well, as I told you, it doesn't make sense, the presence of Mrs. Sheinbaum in Spain, and the relationship with Spain is very, very bad, because she insisted in the claim of López Obrador about for
an apology. He wanted an apology from the king.
Yeah, for us, an apology of the Spanish crown for something that happened 500 years ago, when really it's very, very difficult to understand it. But what I have a lot of quarrels, or I thinking about the problems that we have in Mexico. And we have problems in the economy. We have problems in politics, right? At this moment, the President Sheinbaum, well, she's facing a revolt of the allies, the Green Party, and also the Partido de Trabajo, or the Workers' Party, that were associates of Morena. And even within Morena, there are a lot of difficulties. So I cannot understand the priorities of Mrs. Sheinbaum. I could understand of López Obrador, that he said, well, the internal matters are just the only thing that for my government is important. But in the case of Mrs. Sheinbaum, really is very, very difficult to understand her, not only in foreign policy, but also internal and security policy. You have to remember that the contrabando, the oil.
Oh, the famous huachicol fiscal, which
The huachicol fiscal, or
is the contraband of, how did we translate that? Because huachicol is not a normal word in English, but it's, or in any language, but huachicol is basically it's the contraband of
It's
oil
contraband
or gas.
of gasolines. So
Yes,
that it's 1 year old, and there is not any advancement in that research. That means that the conditions of the regime, the surviving conditions of the regime, has to do with not to do justice, not to advance in justice. And in that respect, really, Mexico is facing a problem, not only because the economy is bad, not only because, well, we have a past of a lot of problems, such as the desaparecidos, the people that is missing, and we are speaking of more than 100,000 people that are missing, and also the relationship with Mr. Trump. But I think there are a lot of problems in Mexico that really I'm very, very worried about the near future. We are going to have elections in a year and a half, and you cannot see at this moment that the elections are going to be. I mean, they're going to run in a normal way.
right.
I really worry about the problems that we are facing in all fields, in all planes of activity of the government. And Mrs. Sheinbaum, I don't think that she is in a very good shape, notwithstanding the high numbers that the encuestas or the polls gave them. But it really, really, what matters is the result of her government, and the results really are um, pretty bad.
It is, the outlook is actually very grim. I agree with you. And I guess part of the problem is I'm not, I worry about who's giving her advice. This idea of announcing that Mexico's considering fracking, which I guess it's probably a good idea, but to do it right now, weeks away from the inaugural event of the World Cup, which already is going to have a lot of people protesting. The last thing you want is now to have the environmental people to start to go out and protesting against fracking. You know what I mean? It was kind of like an unnecessary, another crisis or another group of people that are going to be protesting in the next upcoming weeks. We have the transportation organizations, because of the high price of petroleum or gas or diesel. We have the farmers are going to be protesting. We have the mothers and the relatives of the disappeared are going to be protesting. The teachers are going to be protesting. So now you're also adding to the environmental groups that may start protesting. And, any other group of people who are dissatisfied and angry because there's a lot of problems in Mexico. And it just seems that the World Cup is the perfect moment to be able to express this anger and anxiety. The question is, will the president and her team going to have the ability to kind of negotiate with these groups as they get closer to the inaugural event? And two, even if they negotiate with these groups, of course, we should start talking about the World Cup. It's just like, boy, there's a lot of issues that still need to be resolved. And not only in Mexico, by the way, also in the United States. I mean, there's a lot of question marks of how this World Cup is going to take place. And starting with the high prices of airline tickets, this perception of violence from Mexico. So I don't know. Do you have any sense how the war in Iran is going to be impacting in Mexico? I don't know if you checked it yet. Have you done any evaluation, or have you tried to figure out the impact on the Mexican economy?
Well, I think that the economy, the elections are going to take place with a lot of problems in the economy. And I think that we are, let's say, the inflation, the price, the growth of prices, we are containing it because we are subsidizing the gasolines to some extent, 60%. But we cannot support these subsidies for much longer, and also they cost a lot of, and the government doesn't have margin in order to spend that sort of money. All the problems that we have, or most of the problems that we have to do with two aspects. You have to share money or you have to share power. And the first, you cannot share money because you don't have money to share. And power, well, we are in an authoritarian system that, well, I cannot see, let's say, the old attitude of the PRI that opened the system in order to respond to the social protest. I cannot see that sort of attitude in this government. So I'm pretty worried about the near future. And for the near future, I'm speaking about the coming elections, the elections in the coming year, in the next year.
It's not her problem that, there's this crisis that is arising due to the war in Iran. But even, she may have to quell one of the most important protests that's coming up in the next couple of weeks, which is the price of tortillas. They keep on insisting and demanding that the tortilla makers, maintain the price that they need it to be, so that inflation doesn't skyrocket, and that they can maintain certain social peace. But she has, between the rise of the price of tortillas and the rise of gasoline, which I just don't know how long they're going to be able to control those two factors, and the impact that has also the war in Iran on, for example, fertilizer and other products, and that is required by groups that can become that are very easily mobilized. I just, she has a perfect storm coming up, because she's not going to be able to control. I think at one point the price of gasoline is going to have to go up, and the price of the tortilla is going to go up whether she wants it or not. So will she be able to control the price of public transportation? Probably not. So it's a very, very difficult situation. She has no margin, and she has a lot of groups that voted for Morena, by the way, that are very angry.
Yeah, well, you have that a problem, but also you have another problem, Ana Maria. It has to do with the organized crime intervening in the electoral processes. And the specialists or the people that knows what's going on in the states, in the municipalities, what they can see, or they advance that the candidates, the political parties, even the government has to have an agreement with criminal groups in order to that the election could go, let's say, in a normal way. But that means that we are right now in a narco state, that the criminals is an actor, a political actor, and they could act in not only to let's say to work for the election, but also to impose candidates in order to have control of local authorities. And that means that we are living in a narco state, Ana Maria. And it's really
that's very harsh. Those are very harsh words. But, when you think about it, the fact that during these last 6 or 7 years, there's been a dramatic increase of territorial control by these criminal organizations, and that the prior government did not do very much in trying to stop them. This famous abrazos y no balazos, hugs and no bullets strategy. I mean, it has resulted in an increased territorial control and access to weapons by organizations that are not necessarily these big transnational organizations. I mean, there's the entire communities that have been kidnapped and that are under the extortion. They're being extorted by these these groups. And those are the areas, that's why it's so important when you talk about the elections, that midterm elections next year, is that those groups are clearly going to do whatever it is needed to make sure that their candidates win. And it may not be, maybe they don't inject money, Federico, but they're going to threaten and kill people, which is the other way to exercise control. So if you have, if you add also that the party, the president's party is divided. I mean, there's a strong division between the allies, the Green Party and the Labor Party, and Morena. I mean, do you think that this division among the allies of President Claudia Sheinbaum and Morena has to do with the elections, has to do with the reforms? I mean, how do you interpret this this distancing that could have an impact on Morena and the allies?
Yeah, well, you have two different elections. It's a federal election, that is to say, the process in order to elect the legislator, federal legislator. And in that respect, I think they are going to work together, the three parties. But in the local elections, it's a different story. And in that respect is where I could see that the Green Party and the Labour Party, they are going to negotiate what the candidates that they are going to propose in, let's say, irreducible terms. This it's very, you can see it right now in San Luis Potosí. The Verde says, well, this senator is going to, she is going to be my candidate, withstanding Morena goes with me or not going with us. We, she is going to be our candidate. And that story could repeat not at the local, that's to say in elections of governors, but in elections of municipalities. And also position of the criminals that use the parties, political parties, in order to present the candidates of the criminal groups. And people have a wrong idea about the agreement of politicians with criminals. They think that at the national level, the politicians and the criminals are going to have an agreement. No, that sort of things doesn't happen. What is going on that respect is in negotiation at the local level, at the territorial level, at the municipalities, even in some states. I think in Michoacán is one example. Sinaloa is another example. Sonora and Baja California is an example of criminal groups that have a control of more than half of the state. So in that respect, well, that is the negotiation that is going to take place. But most of the agreement with criminals are going to be with a very local, small groups, but very, very violent. And well, you can see, Ana Maria, there is no week with scandal of Morena's mayor involved with the criminal groups of narco groups. So really, the discomposition is really is at the municipalities. It's in a territorial expression. It's not an agreement of the, let's say, the national.
The federal government. It's not an agreement with the
federal government. Yes, that's right.
So then there comes this issue: what role would or should the federal government play in trying to mitigate the impact of these criminal organizations at the local level? And up until now, I mean, I think the president has had a stronger and more assertive a strategy against some of these criminal organizations, in part because pressures from the U.S. government, in part because these organizations are really have been harming, and have been exercising control over vast territories. I mean, we can have a debate as to whether it's 30%, 40%, 10%, I don't know. But clearly, they have a territorial control, and you have the United States now classifying these organizations as terrorists. So And this is, I guess, my last question. I really appreciate Federico Berrueto joining us today. I'm trying to get a sense, what does this all mean for Claudia Sheinbaum as, you know, Mexico continues to negotiate the USMCA with a very difficult team of negotiators in which Donald Trump is pretty much the leader, just by the amount of comments he makes on social media and the impact these comments has on the bilateral relationship. But I mean, what do you foresee for 2027 in terms of midterm elections and where the Mexican economy is going to be next year?
Well, I think we have a lot of uncertainties for the future. One of them is going to be the agreement of the trade agreement. I don't know in what terms we are going. I'm pretty optimistic that we are going to have a good agreement because in the interests of all the groups that are involved, the the trade agreement has to continue. This is my opinion. But the problem I could see in the near future is what's going on to happen in the midterm elections at the states. Because, well, if the Republicans lose control of the Senate, I think we are going to have a very, very different situation in order to work with the American government. Even I think the presidency of Mr. Trump is going to be in a, well, in a very, very bad
Do you think
condition.
it's going to be at risk?
Yeah, I think his presidency is going to be a risk, of
Mhm.
course, because, well, there are a lot of faults and there are criminal crimes, and also, well, a corruption that is scandalous. So I think Mr. Trump, if he loses the Senate, he is going to have a very, very hard problem. And I cannot see that he is going to be too much interested in Mexico. That's a possibility, but
You know,
really, we don't know.
yeah, I hope so. I mean, midterm elections for Donald Trump, which is November 3rd, are going to somewhat define his future. But he's not I mean, I don't, he's not going to leave. Because if he leaves, I think he's afraid he's going to go to jail. But beyond him leaving, I mean, the process by which a president is forced to step down is still a very difficult process. But you're right. It's interesting. So, what does Donald Trump want with Mexico? What are his priorities? What are his objectives? And you know, I've written a series of columns that were published in Financiero, and you know, it's hard to figure out what he wants with Mexico because I'm not too sure what his principal objectives are with Mexico. Is it the trade agreement? Is it for him to be able to say that he controlled organized crime, or that he, you know, because most of these crime organizations have been weakened, but they're still very, very dangerous in Mexico, less so in the United States. So I think that's going to be the big debate, Federico. What does Donald Trump need for political reasons that can help him in the midterm elections? You know, at what point is Mexico once again going to be the piñata? Because migration has been under control. There's been a reduction of fentanyl. So that is being, you know, sent to the United States. So that's a really good question. You know, what does Donald Trump want? Any other comments? Like any final analysis or any comments, Federico?
Well, we don't know what to expect from Mr. Trump because he's unpredictable. And even if he is too weak, perhaps he is going to do something in order to change the mood of the American society. I don't know. Really, for me, it's very difficult to predict what is going to happen, even if Mr. Trump had a very, very bad election in November.
Mhm.
Uh, but what I could see is that Mexico has a lot of problems, and even our judicial system doesn't exist. The criminal system doesn't
Doesn't
exist.
exist.
It's not
Mhm.
working, Ana Maria.
Mhm.
And that is a problem because you cannot fight against criminals just by sending troops policemen, soldiers.
Mhm.
No, you have to work in this judicial system,
Mhm.
and it's not working at all.
Yeah.
So, and even at local level, you don't have any strategy that involves the policemen at the local level.
Right,
Uh,
right.
so,
Oh my
really,
gosh. It's always kind of depressing talking to you.
well, that is the
But
situation
it's
that
true. I mean, I agree with you. I agree with both of you. It's just that we maybe in the next show we'll just kind of like really kind of lay out what 2027 is going to look like, because if if the economy does not improve, if inflation goes up, if unemployment goes up, these criminal organizations actually do very well with their candidates in the midterm elections. And there is difficulties for the Mexican government to negotiate or renegotiate or to evaluate the USMCA, this trade agreement. And then if you also add Donald Trump with all these things that he's doing, which has been that affects the world economy. We're really going into very crazy times, Federico Berrueto. I really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us here on Living
thank
in
you for
Mexico.
having me.
We're going to go to commercial break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. You're listening and watching Living in Mexico.